how are you guys seeing that brand impact with your customers today? Like, are you seeing the same in like the results that LLMs are pulling them based on their visibility online, like that brand presence across all platforms?
What we see is more mid-funnel, bottom of funnel, very specific types of content is what is helping get surfaced up within those results. And so as we think about helping our own clients, we think about how can we develop systems that help us.
I think what we're seeing is less of the top of the funnel that's being completely destroyed by LLMs, but we are seeing a more educated, more qualified consumer when they do come to our website.
If you can shape the framing of the criteria for success in solving the ultimate outcome or problem that customers are seeking in terms of the job to be done, then it helps them shop with your criteria in mind from a positioning standpoint.
Welcome to SEO On-Air. I'm Koa Kauwe, the VP of Partnerships at Stand Ventures. At Stand Ventures, we work with agencies to fulfill quality, authoritative links and great SEO. Today is a brand-first roundtable because the game is changing. More Google searches are ending without a click than ever, and more consumers are starting to discover AI tools. In fact, recent studies show that the majority of Google searches can end in 0 clicks, and a meaningful share of consumers are already using AI for product discovery. So today's question isn't how do we rank, it's a little deeper. It's when discovery is fragmented and attention is compressed, how does a brand become the thing people and AI choose and trust? So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. And I wanted to also introduce the 3 guests I have with me today. Starting with Paul, he's the VP of Marketing and Innovation at SmartBug Media. He's deep in how marketing teams build trust with clients, how SEO is evolving into AEO, GEO, and how prompts, technical SEO, and delivery models are changing what agencies sell. I'll just say that this has been really interesting for me because customers have redefined, I think, what SEO is in their own head. And even though agencies may deliver a standard SEO product that they feel like aligns really, really well with GEO and AEO, it's not necessarily what their customers say they want anymore. So there's a little bit of translation that goes on there nowadays. So thanks for joining us, Paul. Jed is the founder of BlinkJar Media. His agency is growing fast, strong content creation and optimization being a core part of that. He's actively exploring what LLMs are possible, what's possible with LLMs, and I am sure your customers are asking a lot of the same questions. I saw you shaking your head in agreement with that. And specifically, you're working a lot with like the local businesses, so it's nice to have that local perspective on here as well. So we appreciate you being here. And then Jed, thank you for joining us as well. Oh yeah, thank you, Jed. Jed joining us. He's the founder of Backstory Branding. We brought this in, it's kind of a fun twist for us to have someone that's more on the branding side than the SEO side because the conversations seem to be colliding so aggressively over the last year that we're excited to have your insights and thank you for joining us as well. Okay, so I'll open up with the first question, which I think is a doozy, guys. It's if consumers are touching multiple surfaces before converting, is brand clarity now more important than channel optimization? And I'm going to open this up to the whole group because I think there's a lot of perspective on this one with each of you having a little bit different view of SEO. And I'll read it one more time to give you just another chance here. If consumers are touching multiple surfaces before converting, is brand clarity more important than channel optimization? Let me hear your thoughts.
I think clarity is half of the equation. It's clarity and consistency. And to be consistent in reinforcing the desired perception, which is ultimately what a brand is how it's perceived. And the promise you keep is your brand. So how do you clearly and consistently communicate what your promise is across all those channels and touch points? And it just gets more and more atomized as the sources multiply that are factored into search results. So I think it's that clarity and consistency integrated in one. And I think that it's really important to have the channel optimization still be in effect, but you've got to be more intentional than ever about what you want to communicate, how to communicate it to have the desired impression come across that people can stitch together across all those touch points.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question and let you guys jump in here. If there's so many different avenues for optimization, those channels, and like trying to make them right, do you want to deliver the same message through each channel?
I mean, I think it's like, as Jed was saying, I think it's, consistency is key as a sort of a branding 101 type of lesson. But, I think that we're seeing more and more, especially with our clients, that brands are really, when they're thinking about branding, they're even more so thinking about like the individual thought leaders within their organization versus like this single corporate brand voice that comes out. And I think that's really where I see, in getting back to your question, Koa, I think individuals that are on those channels are going to have unique perspective and voice, and oftentimes those are aligned with the corporate brand. But I think that what we're seeing more and more of is, brands are investing more dollars into like those individual voices and propping up those individual voices. And those are really becoming where I think individuals, they think about a brand, they think about those, whether it's the CEO or it's the leader of product or something like that, they're thinking about those individuals, and those individuals that are the subject matter experts are really sharing their expertise and their opinion and their own taste on what they're seeing within their own arena. So I think that you're going to have individual perspectives across channels, but a lot of times like those people are they're coworkers with each other. They understand the brand to a certain degree.
Yeah, and I would add that before all the LLMs, before that famous date sometime in November, right, of what was it, 2023, when ChatGPT came out, we had it so easy in our world. It was more of a linear world for the most part, where if you optimized for Google and you did kind of followed all the right processes and best methodology, you usually would win. Like it was a great, easy, not, I wouldn't say easy, but it was a straightforward formula. And now the consumer journey is a little bit more crazy. And that's where I think clarity and brand comes in, when the consumer is not just depending on Google, but now we have all the LLMs, you have Reddit, you have all of these other channels. Brand and clarity of brand becomes really, really important.
I'll build on what Paul and Jared have been talking about. The clarity to me is kind of like a professional sports team. You have a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder. There's a defined team identity, and individual players express that identity differently. But when you look at them in total, they go together. And great teams seem to find a way to let individuals shine without losing a sense of what they're about. And the GMs and the coaches cultivate a specific kind of team culture and product and personality. And you learn to love the total package, but you appreciate the contributions each player makes to that bigger picture.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
That was great. I'm thinking about AI content now as you guys are talking about this. And I love the thought of the individual voices that Paul's referring to, and even putting it into like a basketball team. For me, I played basketball, so I can relate to this. There's some players that maybe I don't like. Maybe even if I like the team, I don't like the voice that has, and I just don't listen to that avenue of the marketing. I think what's really interesting here, though, is that on a team, everyone's voice is so individual. And with AI and the way that people are utilizing it today, and I'd say they utilize it to maybe shortcut the actual work of building the unique personality of each avenue, you start to feel like there's one flavor of a company across all different areas of their marketing services. Is that a problem that you guys are seeing with, because that adds to clarity, where they may have had one message they're delivering, but it seems to lack some depth that you're looking for from a lot of agents, from a lot of customers or websites or products or whatever it might be. What do you think about that?
I think that content is now sort of like the ground floor. Everyone has access and everyone can be a content creator now. And so it becomes more taste over volume, if you will, like as far as content creation goes, where you're putting your own personalized, humanized touch on it, where things like ChatGPT and Google Gemini cannot replicate. Because at the end of the day, right now, we can all go out and create as many blog articles as we want, because the price of entry has just been lowered to the bottom floor. Like anyone can become a content creator. So what is going to differentiate you and make your brand clear and have clarity is going to be kind of that human, that tasteful human touch that these LLMs cannot replicate.
I think there's room for different aspects and dimensions of a brand's personality. Instead of being mono voiced and being the same personality in every circumstance and situation or scenario, it's good to have a couple of flavors of the brand personality and flexing and leaning into those depending on the audience and the opportunity, the context. It'd be like somebody who's always in a suit and tie. It works in a business setting, maybe a 40th floor business meeting in downtown New York. But what about if you're meeting with somebody who's a farmer? And can you get into character depending on what's appropriate for the brand? And every brand has its limits. You can't be everything to everyone. It'll be irrelevant to everyone if you try to be broadly, indiscriminately applicable. But if you have 3 or 4 different aspects to your personality, you can lean into those from one context to another. I think that is a good way to think about it. Instead of just having one note, it's more like a chord of notes that you play.
Yeah, and I would add to that, like, kind of music metaphor. I think that, like, you have 7-10 people representing a brand, individual thought leaders out there talking about the brand, and like one of those voices you may not really like. And I think that it makes, within social, like every channel really, like you have the ability to sort of silence or like see less and less of an individual's message. And there's sort of annoying people out there. You're just like, I don't like the delivery of this. I don't like the way they're talking about this. But like, I think the other 8 to 10 people that are on their team, like, if you're still, you believe in that message, you like the content that you're getting from them, you're going to continue to, you'll phase out the people that you don't want to listen to, and then the people you want to listen to, those are the people that will, as long as you're engaging with their content. Social channels are really optimized to show you more of that content. So I think that's where, like, I think that there's not really a danger of, there's certain voices that, as long as they're not like, really saying stuff that's against your brand, I don't think there's really a ton of danger when you have those sort of voices that are maybe a little outspoken or just a little bit outside of what your brand typically is saying.
Yeah, I was just going to say, chemistry is one of those X factors. And you look at the bidding war for the guys who do the Inside the NBA, the studio crew of Ernie Johnson, Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, and Shaquille O'Neal. They've got chemistry. So they're all different personalities, but somehow they're better together collectively than they are individually. And there's something magical that happens when those guys banter about basketball. And it's almost like, as a business leader or brand manager, you got to find a way to cast the characters that you're working with into an ensemble that people like to hear in total. And if somebody doesn't fit, maybe you've got to miscast.
I'm glad that you said that, because that does take me into my next question, which is finding that clarity. Because, I mean, I'll say, Jared, if you're working with more local businesses, I've experienced a lot of local SEO myself. And when it comes to those customers, they don't know what their core keywords are, their sort of service really is, and they're not necessarily talking to the right groups, right? So there's something about the clarity there that they're missing. And I want to understand, I mean, this would be asking Phil Jackson, but to stick to the basketball stuff, right? Like how you made everyone have like how did you coach the most championships teams? What's the secret? So I know it's complicated to just say what the secret is, but to pull all that information out of the customer, do you have any ways that you guys have found that really open up a customer in the right way? Because a lot of people use a generic questionnaire, and I'm curious if they, a 20-question survey can really pull that out, or if you feel like it's more complicated.
I think it's more complicated than, there's always time and place for surveys, things like that. But I think where we're seeing the most value with ourselves and with clients is call transcription data, and like from 50-minute long sales conversations, and actually being able to pull the transcripts from tens or hundreds of calls to be able to really see how that sentiment is changing over time and what customers are asking for over time. And I think that's kind of where AI has really empowered a lot of brands to be able to do, and is to just be able to understand a lot of conversations all at once, and not just like not just hearing like one individual.
Yeah, I think you get overall sentiment or analysis of a collection of, like Paul was saying, 1,000 calls. That was hard to do before AI. Now you can literally take that information, whether it's Google Notebook or Notebook LM or some other platform, and you can basically start to have conversations based on those calls. What we find is, like, when we say it, sometimes our customer or client would pay attention, but a lot of times when the customer is asking those questions, we can point strictly to the customer is saying X, Y, Z. We think you need to improve on what they're asking. But taking all of that from what was maybe overwhelming before AI now can be done within seconds.
I appreciate what Paul, you and Jared said about breadth. I also think there's a need to go deep and selectively choose customers that represent your ideal customer profile or persona, and through in-depth interviews, uncover and surface insights into why they resonate with the brand. And doing that enough times that you start to hit saturation where you're starting to hear the same themes and patterns. We found that you can co-create brand messaging through that kind of insight-driven conversation where you're getting ideas and inspiration from the customers, and you're able to reflect it back to them in their own voice. And when that happens, there's this connection that's really hard to create any other way. So if, in collaboration with your client, find customers who represent the ideal, and then reverse engineer, deconstruct why they connect so deeply with the brand, and then reflect that back to the masses. That can be a winning combination. The breadth and the depth, identifying who to interview, looking for those high-level patterns, and then going deep to really understand and unpack the details.
And I'll second that or support that in the sense that we've started doing a lot of case studies that are kind of allowing our clients' customers to speak on a certain topic. And it's what we find is it's more natural, it's more human, and it's very, very hard to replicate that in a LLM.
That's a great point. I think if you can infuse that human voice and that relatable heartbeat of a real conversation, it just enriches the outputs that much more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one other just point on this is in terms of brand clarity. I think AI really rewards or looks to consensus of conversations that are happening out there. Crawls the whole web, crawls all social channels, and is able to provide a level of summary. And I think that as SEOs, we looked at ranking factors back in the day, and I guess we still look at ranking factors, but so often we would optimize for like backlinks. And now more dollars are being put into mentions within channels, citations really. And citations for SEO, it's not a new thing. Like SEO has been talking about citations for a long time, but I think that's really now what AI is looking at and putting more weight into. And I think that's how what brands are, they're really emphasizing that and trying to drive more conversations to these channels where AI is paying attention. And I think that's like where that's how they're able to get more information on how does the market think about their positioning today? Not just like what they define as here's our positioning, but like what does the market actually think about them? And so I think that's another just big shift that's just happening overall.
I agree. I think in the old days, it's like the old days 3 years ago, when what you would say on your website and how you would optimize for Google was the most important thing. And now I think the most important thing as we move and make this shift and transition into AI, it's sort of like, what are other properties saying about your brand instead of what you're saying about the brand. So it's like, what are other avenues? Maybe it's a Reddit, or maybe it's LinkedIn, or whatever it may be. What are they saying when you're not in the room about your brand? I think is going to be more important moving forward in this AI search world.
That's really interesting to me. And I can come back to our first question, which was, if consumers are touching multiple surfaces before converting, is brand clarity more important than channel optimization? And I'm thinking about this question with a slightly different perspective now. There's been the wave of opinion that SEO is dead on the internet, right? SEO is dead, and there's 0-click options and everything else. And we know that AI is utilizing their website to understand who they are, building some brand clarity. But there's some truth to the fact that their brand is far beyond their website today. Like you said, Reddit, Quora, and a lot like local SEO, is reliant on reviews to just generate authority. It feels like a website is now reliant on its footprint beyond itself to generate authority for AI. How are you guys seeing that brand impact with your customers today? Like, are you seeing the same in like the results that LLMs are pulling them based on you said the breadth, Jared, of their visibility online, like that brand presence across all platforms? How is that affecting your customers today?
I mean, I can jump in here. I think every one of our own websites, as well as all of our clients' websites, have seen some dips in organic traffic over the last couple of years. And I don't think there's when we look at a lot of that top of funnel traffic that AI has gobbled up, it's something where we look at, well, what are the levers now that we can pull to help drive meaningful traffic to a client's website. I think a lot of the traffic that many of our websites did lose, a lot of us have been optimizing for top mid-funnel for a lot of years. And so a lot of that educational content, like people are just getting that quick answer within ChatGPT and whatnot. And so I think where we kind of think about is like, well, people that are going into ChatGPT and AI, they're putting in queries that are 25 words long or longer, pages long queries. And so like what shows up for that? Well, more specific kinds of content shows up for that. And what we see is more mid-funnel, bottom of funnel, very specific types of content is what is helping get surfaced up within those results. And so as we think about helping our own clients, we think about how can we develop systems that help us create more long-tail, mid-funnel, deep-funnel content that does align with those long-tail queries. And how do we build systems that can help us write a lot of more of that content? I feel like as SEOs, like we're almost getting back into the days where it's like, oh, we got to churn out a ton of content, but now it's getting a little bit more bottom or mid funnel kind of content. It's not, we're not just churn out tons of top of funnel content. So those are some shifts that I'm seeing just from a content creation and like a creating new systems perspective for our clients.
I was just going to say, I like the way you're stratifying the funnel content. I think it's really important to get coverage across all aspects of it.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is less of the top of the funnel that's being completely destroyed by LLMs, but we are seeing a more educated, more qualified consumer when they do come to our website. So we may be getting fewer clicks, so to speak, or fewer visits. But what we're finding is that the consumer is using LLMs for their top of the funnel kind of educational searches. And then they're educating themselves, obviously. And then especially on a local level, when it comes to, okay, now I'm more educated on this topic and what my needs are. Now I want to find out who's the best to make this decision in this market. And they're still using traditional search for those so that they can make their own decision and verify what the LLMs have provided with them. So we're seeing less traffic. And even though we're seeing less traffic from an organic standpoint, a lot of times, we're still seeing an inverse where the conversion levels are up. So we're seeing more qualified traffic, if that makes sense.
We've noticed as well that if you can shape the framing of the criteria for success in solving the ultimate outcome or problem that customers are seeking in terms of a job to be done, then it helps them shop with your criteria in mind from a positioning standpoint. And if you can eventually bring them back as having the only solution that satisfies those criteria, it's a nice way to build a content strategy, a multimodal content strategy you can execute across channels, but having that underlying framework guide that process.
Yeah, and I'll get to a point that Jared was talking about in terms of like traffic quality, and I think we're seeing similar sort of patterns happen where a lot of overall volume of traffic has really gone down for most websites, all websites. But when you start to set up your UTM and all your analytics properly, you see those leads coming in from AI. Like, it's just the quality of that lead, who you're talking with. It just they're converting at a much higher level to a customer than leads that are coming from other channels. And so we're almost encouraged by those types of leads that are coming in. Like, this is a ChatGPT lead. Like, let's put more calories towards this one. Given that they're probably a little bit more educated, they've already done a little bit more of their homework, and they've been given this recommendation from AI. And so I just love seeing, like, yeah, okay, we've lost a lot of traffic, but like the quality of it, especially from AI channels, has just really gone up.
You touching on something that Jed said there that I think is really fascinating is like the value proposition. Like, are you providing value to the LLMs? Because your customer's doing their research in there and the LLMs are trying to help them find a solution. So we're really just providing value online to the customers as they're prepping for for their purchase. We had a garage door marketing company that was handling a garage door customer, and they saw a massive drop in organic traffic for a specific high level key, like a top of the funnel term that they had, which was, I think, like programming your garage door remote or reprogramming your garage door remote. Because realistically, no one that needs that term is going to be buying a new garage door unless their garage door is completely broken, and they're going to go through everything they can to fix it before they find out if there's still a customer that's going to be buying a garage door or not. So you're saying you've eliminated those customers coming through and asking your company for how to reprogram a remote, but they still ultimately need a garage door if things are broken, and they don't just disappear. Like, they're going to have to find their way back to the funnel at a different point in time. Now the question is, how do you get recommended through LLMs? And I think that's where I liked what Jed was saying too. Like, the traffic is changing where it's coming from. So now you're trying to position yourself as answering all these research-based questions for your customer to make sure that you are the one that guided them through that solution, so they come back to you at that point in time. It's kind of building a brand based on how helpful you are.
I think you need to be willing to talk about things that other agencies, like in our world, are not really accustomed to talking about. I'll give you a quick example. We had one of those leads that Paul's talking about that came from ChatGPT. He even gave me, I was so curious because this was months ago and it was one of the first we've received. And I wanted to know more about like what he was searching to find us. And the in-depth search query or prompt that he put in was just like, if you would put that into Google, I think it would discombobulate, right? So BlinkJar, little bit of BlinkJar in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, was one of the ones that the LLM recommended. And it was because we are one of the only agencies, and I'm not trying to speak bad about agencies, I'm just trying to make a point here, that is willing to carve out like pricing information. So the pricing information that he was asking ChatGPT, we hit right on the nose. And so he was like, give me examples of agencies that are $5,000 to $10,000 per month and that offer blah, 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 blah. Well, we happen to talk about those things on our website. And so we were listed in that answer to that specific prompt. And I'm not saying we're great or we're better than any other agency. What I'm saying is we need to, and this is not just agencies, this is what we tell our clients as well. We need to talk about a lot of things and talk about them more in depth, because the way people will be searching, especially moving forward, is completely different from a keyword search 5 years ago, like marketing agency, in the South or whatever. Or even marketing agency with pricing would be a similar, like old school, search query. Now it's like a full-fledged conversation, and we need to answer those questions so that we are a part of those answers that the LLM is giving.
I was just going to say, the word that comes to mind for me, Jared, when I hear you talk about being more open to talking about more topics, is transparency. Mark Cuban was at this local tech conference. Maybe you were there, Koa Summit, and he was talking about cost plus drugs and how they just disclose openly how much it costs them to get the drug, and then they mark it up 15%, and it's grown dramatically without any, he said, without any marketing. but it's been word of mouth because it was kind of a noteworthy, newsworthy idea and approach to be transparent. So we're kind of in an era where there's really nowhere to hide. So why not just preempt the questions by being transparent? Because ultimately that's what people want.
Yeah, Jed, I was just going to jump in there. I think that I was also thinking transparency. It's like if you don't say what your pricing is on your website, then someone on Reddit or someone on other channels is going to say, this is how much BlinkJar costs. And then AI is going to use that as the number when people start searching for that. So it's better to just be transparent, have it on your website, so that your website is the canonical version of it. AI looks at that canonical version because it's on your website when somebody does that kind of query.
You guys are breaking marketing teams everywhere where they don't want to release that information because the funnel gets a lot smaller if they say they're pricing up front. This is a huge pivot in consumers. And honestly, it's exciting for you as a consumer. If you're shopping for something, transparency of price is going to be amazing because it's kind of what capitalism, I think, is all about, right? Like making it competitive as possible. But this is not a normal practice. When we talk about those funnels and talk about conversion, you're usually trying to get everyone down that funnel, and you don't want to disqualify anyone based on them seeing the price initially. Tell me, do you guys really think that that's like the future, that everything needs to be so transparent? Do you think the sales processes are just completely changing?
I think if you have context, you can make that transparency meaningful. Context is really important. So if you just provide a number without any context, I think that's going to leave more questions unanswered than you resolve. But if you provide context to help people understand the rationale behind the number, I think that can go a long way to giving them confidence that they should continue the conversation with you.
I would just jump in there too. Also, I think that we've been talking about having content on our website and being transparent about that. But I think consumers also need validation. And so third-party reviews on Google My Business or Yelp or whatever channel you optimize for, they still look at that. And LLMs look at that as well as a big signal. So we can create as many pages as we want on our website talking about and trying to be transparent. But if we're not looking at those channels where the consumers are paying attention and we're not actively building reviews or asking for reviews, then when people go ask for a recommendation, that is one signal that it's going to kind of rule you out if you only have 3 reviews compared to all your competitors who have 20 or 100.
So marketing teams are changing the way they do things, whether it's putting price on the website and making sure that everything's transparent or releasing a ton more data, I think too. I've seen a lot more graphs and charts and just more information being released to the consumers. There's a tough balance here of the volume play that we had in the past of making sure they get all their blogs out and everything else. But now it seems like we're pulling back from that phase and we're just asking them to be more creative. So it feels like we're in this endless ask of be more creative, be better. I think I've seen the memes of asking AIs to be more dramatic or make a picture more round and even more round than that and more round than that. Where does the creativity go here? Can you guys give me some experiences that you've seen, whether it's your teams or customers, where you've gone a layer deeper in creativity and you've seen success from that?
I was just, somebody's got to generate an idea that makes people stop, reconsider, reframe the conversation or the competitive context, the landscape. And ideas are not going to be generated by AI. They can derive from existing sources, but to generate an aha new way of thinking about it, that's going to be human-led, at least for the foreseeable future.
I think that's a brilliant take. I agree. I think what we're seeing more of now is a little bit less of do this for me, because they're probably utilizing AI and doing the things that we used to do. It's a lot less labor intense and a lot more use your brain, not your hands, where there's this expert premium where they're looking at us more of using our experience to kind of guide them. So we're seeing a little bit more of a consultative sale and less of, okay, we're going to do 4 blogs and 64 social posts per month and 1 email, and those were the old day deliverables. I think we're kind of transitioning away from that and a little bit more of we want you for your brain to kind of separate from, because we can get all that information and probably do it internally. A little bit more on using our experience and our creativity to help guide them moving forward.
Before I let the other two jump in, I'm going to just say you got ahead of the question, Jared. That was perfect. My last question for you guys, I'm going to share it now and have them expand even further. But if brand becomes the differentiator, like that unique voice that your company has becomes the differentiator, and AI commoditizes execution, which we are seeing today in the actual fulfillment tasks being much, much easier to do than they have been in the past, where does the agency model evolve to next? And I think you've touched on it there, Jared, with your perspective of it's far more consultative than it used to be. Paul and Jed, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think that the one of the reasons that agencies get hired, consultants get hired, is because they have visibility into working with hundreds or thousands of other clients in the past. And I think that expertise and strategy is something that companies are going to be buying forever. They're always going to want that outside opinion. They're going to want that either validation or whether validating something is right or wrong. And so I think like agencies are constantly going to be hired for that strategy work, but I think now it's going to be more providing organizational wide or department level AI strategy, whether it's strategy for what tools you should implement or systems or anything like that. So I think that's how agencies are going to evolve more. I also think that and I don't know if this is contrarian, but I think that where agencies we've always delivered work, content or brand work, things like that. And I think we're going to be delivering more agentic work. I think we're going to be building more AI and for our clients, we're going to be building them tools. We're going to become more like application developers, but we're also going to be maintaining those, because you can't build agents and just let it go free forever and it's going to do a great job and you can just trust it. Those agents need oversight. They need maintenance. Models improve over time. And so you have to continue to improve those over time. So I think that's really where agencies, I think, are going to evolve to, is being sort of like your builder and manager of your agent workforce. I think we're going to see more of that happening.
I agree. I also think that taking responsibility for the outcome is going to be imperative. The managing partner at McKinsey was recently quoted as saying that they're shifting from deliverables to outcomes as consultancies. So the more responsibility you take for the ultimate outcome, the more invaluable you're going to be to that relationship and to that partner. I like the idea of not being able to set it and forget it. A lot of people think once you have an agent, that agent's going to run continuously without having to be updated, and nothing could be further from the truth because it changes so fast.
Yeah, and Jed, I think you look at the pricing models of a lot of SaaS companies, and they're shifting towards this credits-based monetization. So they're also pricing in that same outcomes-based outcome compared to a seats-based pricing models that is so typical in SaaS. And so I think that agencies are going to be optimizing that. I think as well as software and a lot of other organizations.
You know how much it's changing the sales game. To think that if it's all just if you said it's according to tokens or however a company might be billing you for the software use, when you're searching for that, you start searching for companies that are going to be a good fit for the number of employees you have or the number of outreaches you do or the number of whatever it is. It becomes so granular. You start to understand things way better. And then you're trusting an AI to connect you to the best solution. Whereas before, you talked to 6 different sales reps and hoped that they were telling you the truth about whatever they were providing to you. And you tested that solution for 6 months until you found out it wasn't the right fit and checked the next one and the next one. So this is a really cool view of how the consumer is going to be benefiting from the use of these tools and the data that's going to be transferred between companies.
All the more reason to make sure you're really delivering value. The brand's got to be as good as it pretends to be. So the brand is ultimately the promise you keep. So you better be making a compelling promise and keeping it.
The marketing agencies that are on the podcast pretty regularly say they're not doing their own paid ads or their own SEO because they have a very flooded industry and their best leads come from referrals, from doing good business and just getting referred to by the next customer. It seems like that's where LLMs are kind of getting to the point where they're trying to recognize who's doing good business online through all the different brand areas that we talked about today, and then recommending someone based on their best estimation of that. So really we're building a reputation online. And that's what I guess, a synonym for brand in the conversation we had today. Is that fair?
I think it's pretty fair. I think it kind of it materializes in different ways, and in certain verticals, like reviews are so important to how a brand gets surfaced. Whereas you have very niche types of organizations where there's nobody really reviewing that type of product because there's not that many customers of it. And in that way, I think that that on-site signals and like having a breadth of content and transparent content, things like that. That's where for those types of companies, that carries a lot more weight than just looking at third-party validation.
It makes me excited about the future.
Yeah, I think referrals are always like our number one, lead generator. But I think moving forward, this could be like a sort of a referrals on steroids type of thing where, kind of like what Paul was saying, the more reviews you have, the more positive sentiment you have across the web, the more likely people are going to trust you. You become an authoritative source across the web, and the more likely those LLMs are going to recommend you.
The story we tell. Think of that coming back to brand. What's the story behind your marketing agency, Jared? And then if you've shared that story, they know your pricing, they know the reviews, they see everything. I think that's what makes me get optimistic about it. Is it's the opportunity to make everyone have better information and make better decisions, and not just the fear of like a tool that could replace fulfillment tasks. When in reality, great, it takes away the work of doing like a blog or writing a blog, and now your team is focusing on the strategy for their customer that's going to make your solution even better. And I think that's a really optimistic view. I'll give you guys, if you have any last thoughts, that was the last question I had for you today. So we'll probably wrap up with that. We'll have you guys ask you to connect with each other on LinkedIn. We appreciate the guests being here, but we hope that this is part of a network that we can continue to build with each other. So thanks for joining us today on SEO On Air, and we'll see you next time.